Above the Rim, 1994, wasn't just a basketball movie. It was a story about ambition, power, and the price of life on the streets. 28 years later, those faces have changed in ways no one expected. Stay with us as we uncover their real names, ages, and even their love lives. Leon Robinson as Thomas Shep Shepard. Thomas Shep Shepard, the tragic warning at the heart of Above the Rim, was played by Leon Robinson. At 32 years old, he entered the film in 1994, embodying a former basketball prodigy already defeated by regret. His Shep was not loud or reckless. He was hollow, dangerous, and unbearably real. The role felt like a prophecy, more than a performance. Born March 8, 1962, grew up in Harlem, New York, Leon Robinson was raised by a single mother in an environment shaped by poverty, violence, and constant instability. The absence of his father carved a permanent wound, forcing Leon into adulthood before childhood ever finished. Survival meant emotional armor, and loneliness became normal. For a time, the streets pulled harder than dreams, and the line between self-destruction and survival blurred frighteningly thin. Basketball and performance became his escape routes. Leon earned recognition through early roles and broke through with films like The Five Heartbeats and Cool Runnings, later receiving an Emmy nomination for portraying David Ruffin in The Temptations. Yet behind critical acclaim, his personal life remained fractured. He never married, forming intense but unstable relationships that mirrored his unresolved childhood abandonment. Typically, his relationship with Cynthia Bailey, which produced a daughter, ended painfully in 1999, followed by long-standing tension over finances and co-parenting. The breakup reinforced his fear of permanence, pushing him deeper into emotional solitude. Music with Leon and the Peoples offered expression, but not healing. Fame brought admiration, not intimacy. Now Leon Robinson is 64 years old, still active in acting, music, and producing, but living a life marked by restraint and distance. His estimated net worth of $1.5 million reflects longevity rather than excess. He stands as a man who transformed pain into art, yet never fully escaped the scars that shaped him. Tupac Shakur as Birdie Shepard. Birdie Shepard, the ruthless street enforcer in Above the Rim, was played by Tupac Shakur. At 23 years old, he entered the film in 1994, bringing a volatility that felt less performed than lived. Every glance carried threat, every silence felt loaded. Birdie didn't need many scenes. His presence poisoned the air. Born June 16, 1971 in East Harlem, New York, Tupac Shakur was raised inside political fire and personal chaos. His parents were members of the Black Panther Party. His mother battled addiction, and father figures vanished into prison walls. Poverty, constant relocation, police surveillance, and street violence were not phases. They were the background noise of his childhood. Even as a gifted student of poetry and theater, he carried rage and sadness too heavy for a teenager. Love never arrived gently. In 1995, he married Keisha Morris, but the union collapsed almost immediately under the weight of incarceration, paranoia, and the relentless pull of street life. Jail time, court cases, and public accusations followed him everywhere, tightening the pressure until intimacy became impossible. Tupac lived fast because he believed time was already running out. His career exploded anyway. Albums like All Eyes on Me turned him into a global force, while films such as Juice and Poetic Justice proved he was more than a rapper. He won major awards, sold over 75 million records, and spoke for a generation in pain. Yet the fame only magnified the danger around him. Violence followed him like a shadow that never slept. Sadly, Tupac Shakur died at 25 years old on September 13, 1996, 6 days after being shot in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The case remains unresolved, turning his death into a wound that never closed. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $40 million, a fortune that continued to grow as his legacy eclipsed his life. He was buried quietly, but his voice never stopped echoing. Duane Martin, as Kyle Lee Watson. Kyle Lee Watson, the fallen streetball king in Above the Rim, was played by Duane Martin. At 29 years old, he stepped into the film in 1994, carrying the physical authority of a real athlete and the emotional weight of someone who knew what it meant to lose everything. His performance felt less like acting and more like confession. From the first frame, Kyle Lee Watson looked like a man already haunted by the end of his own story. Duane Martin, born August 11, 1965, came into the world in Brooklyn, New York, a place where ambition often collided violently with reality. Raised in a middle-class household surrounded by crime, racial tension, and limited escape routes, he learned early that talent alone did not guarantee safety. Basketball became his lifeline, a dream powerful enough to drown out fear until injury destroyed his path toward the NBA. The loss was crushing. For years, it left him wrestling with quiet depression and the shame of watching his childhood purpose evaporate. That fracture followed him into adulthood. Martin pivoted toward acting not out of desire, but survival, slowly building credibility through films like Above the Rim and The Inkwell. But while his career stabilized, his personal life unraveled. In 1996, he married actress Tisha Campbell, and together they built a public image of success and longevity. Behind closed doors, the marriage endured accusations of infidelity, lawsuits, and relentless financial pressure that eroded trust year by year. By 2016, the collapse became public. Bankruptcy filings revealed overwhelming debt, stripping away the illusion of control. The stress accelerated emotional distance, and by 2020, after 24 years of marriage, the divorce was finalized. Custody battles and public scrutiny deepened Martin's isolation, turning private pain into spectacle. What hurt most was not the loss of money, but the loss of identity, all gone at once. Today, Duane Martin is 61 years old, still alive, still working, but far quieter than before. He continues acting selectively, appearing in television projects while rebuilding stability piece by piece. His estimated net worth of $500,000 reflects a career that survived profound collapse rather than conquering it. Today, his life reads less like a comeback and more like endurance. Marlon Wayans as Boogaloo, the sharp-tongued outsider in Above the Rim, was played by Marlon Wayans. At 22 years old, he joined the film in 1994, injecting humor and nervous energy into a world ruled by fear. His character joked because silence felt dangerous. Even then, comedy was survival. Born July 23, 1972, grew up in New York City, Marlon Wayans was the youngest of 10 children in a deeply religious Jehovah's Witness household. Raised in public housing, money was scarce, and rules were suffocating. Faith was strict, discipline relentless, and personal freedom limited, leaving Marlon torn between obedience and self-expression. Laughter became his rebellion. Family love was loud but complicated. Being the youngest meant being overlooked, expected to toughen up quickly and never complain. That pressure carved anxiety beneath the jokes. As his career rose, emotional stability lagged behind, and long-term relationships carried strain rather than refuge. He avoided marriage, perhaps fearing permanence more than loneliness. Professionally, he thrived. From In Living Color to blockbuster comedies like Scary Movie and White Chicks, Marlon built an empire on laughter. He earned major award nominations and box office dominance, yet his dramatic turn in Requiem for a Dream hinted at deeper pain beneath the surface. Today, Marlon Wayans is 54 years old, still creating, producing, and performing across film, stand-up, and streaming platforms. His estimated net worth stands at around $40 million, a symbol of success earned through relentless work rather than ease. Behind the jokes remains a man shaped by pressure, faith, and fear. Proof that sometimes the funniest people learn to laugh so they wouldn't break. Bernie Mac as Flip, the sharp-tongued, intimidating street presence in Above the Rim, was played by Bernie Mac. At 37 years old, he appeared in the film in 1994, grounding the chaos around him with a dangerous calm. His performance didn't shout for attention, it warned you. Flip felt like someone who had already buried too many friends to be surprised by violence. Bernard Jeffrey McCulloch, born October 5, 1957, grew up on the south side of Chicago, a place where grief arrived early and stayed late. His childhood collapsed at 16, when his mother died of cancer, ripping away the one source of stability he had. Forced to grow up overnight, Bernie moved between relatives, absorbing street violence, poverty, and loneliness. Comedy became a shield. Adulthood didn't soften him. He worked exhausting, humiliating jobs for years, janitor, bus driver, mover, while performing stand-up at night, often to hostile crowds. Even after breakthrough moments like the original Kings of Comedy, the scars never left. Fame came late, and it arrived carrying old exhaustion rather than relief. His marriage to Rhonda Gore, begun in 1977, was one of the few constants in his life. They raised a daughter together, but success strained the home he fought to protect. Behind laughter, Bernie battled sarcoidosis, diagnosed in the 1980s, a chronic disease that slowly weakened his body. Finally, Bernie Mac died at 50 years old on August 9, 2008, after complications from pneumonia, following weeks in intensive care in Chicago. His estimated net worth was around $10 million, earned through The Bernie Mac Show and major films like Ocean's 11. He was laid to rest quietly, but his voice never stopped echoing. Wood Harris as Motal, the quiet observer in Above the Rim, was played by Wood Harris. At 25 years old, he entered the film in 1994, offering restraint where others exploded. His presence felt deliberate, watchful, as if Motal understood how quickly life could turn. He didn't need many words to feel dangerous. Born October 17, 1969, as Sherwin David Harris, Wood grew up in Chicago, Illinois, in a household that valued discipline but offered little shelter from outside pressure. Though his family was stable compared to many around him, racial tension and academic expectations weighed heavily. He learned early that excellence was required to survive. That pressure created focus, but also isolation. Art became his escape. Basketball and performance gave him identity, yet even education came with struggle. While studying at New York University, Harris was once expelled for tardiness, a humiliating reminder of how easily opportunity could vanish. Only after classmates fought for his reinstatement did he return, carrying the fear of losing everything again. That anxiety shaped the intensity he later brought to roles. His career steadily darkened in tone. From The Wire to Remember the Titans, Harris specialized in men burdened by power, loyalty, and consequence. Unlike many peers, his personal life remained intact, married to Rebecca Harris since 2001, raising 2 children, yet the cost was time. Long shoots, emotional roles, and constant travel tested the balance he fought to maintain. Now, Wood Harris is 57 years old, still working steadily across film and television, choosing roles with weight rather than visibility. His estimated net worth of around $500,000 reflects a career built on craft, not spectacle. Tonya Pinkins as Myleka Watson. Myleka Watson, the woman holding together a collapsing home in Above the Rim, was portrayed by Tonya Pinkins. At 32 years old, she grounded the story with quiet endurance rather than spectacle. Her presence felt like someone who had learned to survive without being seen. Born May 30th, 1962 in Chicago, Illinois, Tonya Pinkins grew up inside an urban pressure cooker. Her father was a police officer, her mother a factory worker. Two jobs meant to protect and provide, yet never enough to shield a child from the city's volatility. Violence hovered nearby, stability felt temporary, and discipline was strict. From an early age, Tonya learned that composure was armor, and silence could be safer than protest. Adulthood brought achievement and fracture. She married young, divorced, married again, and divorced again, carrying the weight of custody battles and emotional exhaustion that followed each separation. Motherhood did not soften the grind, it intensified it. Between court dates and rehearsal rooms, she learned how easily love could become negotiation. Her career, meanwhile, demanded excellence. From daytime television to Broadway, she earned reverence the hard way, through craft. Roles on All My Children made her a familiar face, but it was the stage that crowned her, culminating in a Tony Award for Jelly's Last Jam. As of 2026, Tonya Pinkins is 64 years old, still creating, acting, directing, and provoking conversation through independent film and theater. Her estimated net worth of about $3 million reflects decades of disciplined work rather than celebrity excess. She remains formidable, unsoftened by survival. David Bailey, as Coach Mike Rollins. Coach Mike Rollins, the high school basketball coach and adult mentor responsible for guiding and protecting young players in Above the Rim, was played by David Bailey. At 61 years old, he lended gravity earned, not performed. He didn't lecture, he weighed the room. Rollins felt like a man who had already lost arguments he never stopped believing in. Born October 27, 1933 in Newark, New Jersey, David Bailey came of age during the long shadow of the Great Depression. Poverty was not a chapter, it was the setting. Instability shaped him early, teaching thrift, restraint, and endurance. Opportunity was scarce. Consistency was rarer. Acting became a discipline, not a dream. Marriage brought chapters of hope and fracture. He married, divorced, raised children across different households, and later found steadier ground. The emotional toll accumulated quietly. No headlines, only years. Work provided structure. Television soaps demanded reliability, and Bailey delivered it for decades, becoming a constant presence rather than a star. His career matured into longevity. He became a fixture on daytime television, most memorably on Guiding Light and later as the unseen, then revealed power on Passions. The roles asked for authority. His life had trained him for it. He wrote, directed, and helped build theater communities when cameras were off. Sadly, David Bailey died at 71 years old on November 25, 2004, after drowning in his apartment pool in Los Angeles. A cruel, sudden end for a man known to swim daily. His estimated net worth was around $1 million at the time of his death, the product of steady work rather than windfall. Byron Minns as Monroe Monroe, a street-level basketball player and associate within Birdie's extended crew in Above the Rim, was portrayed by Byron Minns. At 32 years old, he stepped into the film in 1994, blending into the streets rather than commanding them. Monroe was meant to feel real. His stillness suggested someone who had learned when to speak and when to disappear. Byron Keith Minns, born in 1962, grew up in an urban environment where survival demanded awareness more than ambition. Little is publicly known about his childhood, but the absence itself speaks volumes. Cities like the one he came from did not preserve stories easily. They erased them. Growing up surrounded by hardship, instability, and limited opportunity, Byron learned early that attention could be dangerous, and invisibility could be protection. That instinct followed him into adulthood. Acting was not an instant escape, but a narrow door, one he slipped through quietly. He appeared in films rooted in street reality, including South Central, roles that echoed the environments he knew rather than glamorized them. Writing became another outlet, a way to shape narratives instead of waiting to be handed one. Years passed, and Byron's work resurfaced unexpectedly. His involvement in Black Dynamite revealed a different edge: satire, timing, and awareness, proving that his restraint had always hidden range. It was recognition delayed, not denied. Yet even then, fame stayed at arm's length, as if both sides understood the distance was safer. Today, Byron Minns is 64 years old, still active as an actor and writer, choosing projects carefully and remaining outside the machinery of celebrity. His estimated net worth of around $500,000 reflects a career built quietly, without spectacle or excess. Sean Michael Howard as Bob, a loyal teammate and close friend within Kyle Watson's inner circle in Above the Rim, was played by Sean Michael Howard. At 25 years old, he carried a calm intensity that felt earned rather than rehearsed. His performance didn't demand attention. It invited trust. Bob felt like someone who knew when to stand his ground and when to step back. Born July 31, 1969, in Newark, New Jersey, Sean Michael Howard grew up as the youngest son in a household defined by expectation. Both parents were lawyers, success was assumed, and failure was not discussed. From an early age, pressure came dressed as opportunity. Academic excellence was a mandate, not a choice, and Sean learned to perform competence long before he understood himself. That pressure fractured him quietly. He was placed on a pre-law path that never felt like his own, suffocating curiosity rather than feeding it. Walking away from that future meant disappointing family, risking stability, and stepping into uncertainty alone. He chose acting anyway, carrying guilt alongside ambition as he moved to New York to study and survive on small roles. His career grew steadily rather than explosively. Films like The Cable Guy and voice work on Family Guy gave him range, but rarely spotlight. Behind the scenes, marriages ended, relationships strained, and responsibility followed him early through fatherhood. Stability came, but only after emotional cost. As of 2026, Sean Michael Howard is 57 years old, still working across film, television, theater, and voice acting. His estimated net worth of around $1 million reflects consistency rather than celebrity. He remains a craftsman, proof that not every survivor needs the spotlight to endure. Henry Simmons as Starks. Starks, a competitive streetball player fighting for recognition and status on the same courts as Kyle Watson in Above the Rim, was played by Henry Simmons. At 24 years old, he blended physical authority with youthful restraint. His performance suggested a man still deciding who he would become in real life. Henry Oswald Simmons, born July 1, 1970, in Stamford, Connecticut, grew up in a disciplined household. His mother was a teacher, his father an IRS officer. Structure, rules, and responsibility filled the home. As one of 3 children, including a twin, comparison was unavoidable. Excellence was expected, and emotion was often secondary to performance. Basketball became his release and his burden. A scholarship promised direction, but also narrowed his identity to results and rankings. After graduating, he entered corporate life briefly, only to feel hollowed out by it. Choosing acting meant starting over: financial risk, uncertainty, and the fear of being seen as irresponsible. That internal conflict followed him into every audition. Success came slowly, then suddenly. Roles on NYPD Blue and later Agents of SHIELD brought visibility, but the personal cost lingered. Marriage brought hope and strain. Separation followed. Long shoots and emotional labor tested intimacy, reminding him that stability is never guaranteed. Today, Henry Simmons is 56 years old, actively working in television and film, choosing roles with depth over noise. His estimated net worth of around $2 million reflects years of disciplined craft. He stands today as a man who learned that strength isn't only physical. It's the courage to leave what no longer fits and build something truer, one choice at a time. Michael Rispoli as Richie, The hard-edged presence circling the streets of Above the Rim was played by Michael Rispoli. At 34 years old, he brought a grounded menace that felt lived in rather than acted. As Richie, Rispoli was like someone shaped by pressure in real life. Born November 27, 1960, in Nyack, New York, Michael Rispoli grew up in a working-class Italian-American family where space was tight and expectations were heavier than words. One of 8 children, he learned early how easily you could be overlooked. Attention had to be earned, and silence often meant survival. Poverty and competition inside the home forged a sharp edge that never fully softened. Adulthood brought discipline, but not ease. He chased acting through theater schools and small roles, knowing the odds were cruel. Years passed before recognition arrived, and when it did, it came wrapped in darkness. His turn as Jackie Aprile on The Sopranos cemented his image as a man comfortable playing power, illness, and moral decay. Unlike many peers, his personal life held steady. Married since 1993, raising 3 children, Rispoli built stability quietly while choosing characters that explored collapse. Films like Kick-Ass showed range, but his true strength lay in restraint. Now, Michael Rispoli is 66 years old, still active in television, film, and theater. His estimated net worth of around $2 million reflects longevity rather than excess. He remains a character actor by design, a man who understands that the most dangerous figures are rarely the loudest. Cindy Herron as Birdie's girl, the woman standing beside danger in Above the Rim, was portrayed by Cindy Herron. At 33 years old, she appeared in the film in 1994, projecting confidence wrapped around quiet calculation. Her presence said she understood exactly who Birdie was, and stayed anyway. Cynthia Ann Herron, born September 26, 1961, in San Francisco, California, grew up between identities. With a Black American father and a Swiss-German mother, she learned early how easily belonging could fracture. The pressure to adapt, to be palatable, to be perfect, shaped her childhood. Beauty opened doors, but it also narrowed expectations. Success arrived young and loud. As a founding member of En Vogue, she helped define an era, winning major awards and selling millions of records worldwide. Grammys, charts, acclaim, everything followed. But fame demanded constant reinvention, and motherhood pulled her in the opposite direction. Her marriage to former MLB player Glenn Braggs, begun in 1993, endured for nearly 3 decades before collapsing in 2022. The divorce ended a public image of permanence, leaving behind exhaustion rather than scandal. Years of touring, legal battles, and emotional distance accumulated quietly until separation felt inevitable. As of 2026, Cindy Herron is 65 years old, continuing to perform, record, and protect her creative legacy. Her estimated net worth of approximately $7 million reflects both music and acting success, but not the cost paid privately. She remains poised, resilient, and unbroken, a woman who stood beside danger on screen and learned to survive it off camera. Eric Nies as Montrose. Montrose, a streetball player and member of Birdie's crew, someone who helped enforce control and intimidation around the underground basketball world in Above the Rim, was played by Eric Nies. At 23 years old, he appeared in the film in 1994, embodying a young man who stood beside power rather than leading it. His role showed how easily young men become tools inside someone else's ambition. Born May 23, 1971, in Ocean Township, New Jersey, Eric Nies grew up under constant pressure to succeed. His father was an NBA referee, a respected authority figure whose career placed expectations on Eric from an early age. Discipline mattered. Image mattered. Yet emotional guidance was scarce. Eric learned early that approval came from performance, not vulnerability, and that failure was something to hide rather than confront. Fame arrived before adulthood had fully formed him. In his early 20s, Nees became one of the first reality television stars through The Real World, followed by hosting roles on MTV shows like The Grind. Money, attention, and recognition came fast, but wisdom did not. Trusting the wrong people, he allowed a business manager to control his finances, a mistake that would devastate him. Within a few years, nearly $250,000 was stolen, leaving him financially ruined and professionally stranded. The humiliation cut deep. Nees later admitted he contemplated suicide, overwhelmed by betrayal, shame, and the sudden loss of identity. The industry that celebrated him offered no support once the spotlight moved on. Today, Eric Nies is 55 years old, living a far quieter life centered on health, fitness, and recovery. He works as a wellness advocate and remains involved in nonprofit initiatives focused on healing and hope. His estimated net worth of around $1.5 million reflects years of rebuilding rather than excess. So after nearly 3 decades, these faces from above the rim are no longer just characters on a court. They're survivors of fame, loss, pressure, and time itself. Some rebuilt their lives quietly, some rose higher than anyone expected, and some never made it to the other side. Which story shocked you the most? And which one hurt the hardest to hear? If this journey moved you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more real stories behind the movies you thought you knew.